Hi, welcome to this After Effects compositing tutorial. My name's Scott. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to add some blood splatter to some pre-recorded footage. So let's get started. And if we look up here, I am currently running version 15.1.2. If you're on a different version, everything we do today should work fine. We're only going to be using standard effects within After Effects, but if things do look a little bit different, maybe you're on a different version to me. Okay, let's start by importing our footage. Let's do that by double clicking in the project window and selecting my blood splatter footage, clicking open. If we double click into the footage, we can take a look at what we've got here. Okay, we've got a guy laying on the floor, we've got some people rushing in, and the idea here is that these people are kind of tearing into pieces and we're going to see some blood splatter spraying out from the sides. You may also notice we've got a slight problem down here. We've got some rigging in the shot. We are going to be adding some black bars, so hopefully that takes care of that and we won't have to do anything to replace this ground. Okay, let's try and find a section of the shot that we're going to use. I think we want to show them running in, so let's go to the point where they're about to run in. It's about maybe 3 seconds in. Let's go to the 3-second mark and set that as our in point. And then we'll go for today, about 4 seconds should be enough. So we're going to go to 7 seconds and set our out point. Great. All right, let's drag our footage down onto our timeline. And that will create a new composition for us. And we can close the footage. So here we are, we scrub through our timeline. We can see our footage has come in just as we like. Right, let's go ahead and add these bars so that we can reframe this shot and get it looking exactly how we want to. Now, we are working with 4K footage here, and we would like to add some bars to turn this into scope. At the moment it's 16:9 ratio. We would like something nearer a 2.39:1, which would be CinemaScope. So in order to do that, let's have a look at creating some custom bars that we can make sure are exactly the right size. Okay, if we jump into Google Chrome and have a look at this website, we can see here we're currently using a full container 4K image. We would like to use scope. So to work out the size of our bars, first of all we're going to bring up our calculator and we're going to put in the height of our composition, which in this case is 2160. We're then going to take away the amount needed for the height of the comp that we want. Take away 1716, and that leaves us with 444. If we divide that by 2, we're going to get 222, and this should be the height of our black bars. So let's jump back into After Effects, right click in our timeline, create a new solid. We're going to call this bar and make sure the color is set to black and the size is 4096 by 222. Okay, great. We now have one black bar. We can hold shift, drag this to the bottom, line it up with the bottom edge. We can then select our black bars layer, hit Command or Control D on the keyboard. This will duplicate our layer. We can now drag that one, hold shift and drag to the top and line this up with the edge of the comp. If you find that you need to nudge your layers slightly, you just use the arrow keys on the keyboard. Okay, nice. Next, let's take our blood splatter footage and move it down. We want to try and get our subject here nice and central in the screen. In fact, if we turn on our action safe, we can get a nice cross up and we can use that to help us. About there, looks good. Let's turn off our action safe. And I'm going to take both of these bars and I'm going to go up to layer, pre-compose. I'm going to rename this layer black bars and hit return. So we've just tidied that up now, put them into their own little folder. We can also, if we want to get them out of the way completely, we can toggle our switches, turn on the shy switch, and then when we turn on shy for the timeline, it's gone. And if we need to get it back to make adjustments, there it is. But for now, we'll leave it there. We don't need it anymore. Now, we can unfortunately still see we've got some rigging here. This rigging is going to need to be removed. Oh, one other thing actually that I've just realized, we are working with some footage here from a Blackmagic cinema camera. So if I have a look at footage, we can see yeah, here we go. If we look, now something we need to look at as well before we move on. We are working here with Apple ProRes 422 footage. Now that footage, I believe, is 10-bit rather than 8-bit. So that we can take advantage of all of that color information, we need to change our project settings down here from 8-bit to 16-bit. You can do that by holding down the Alt key and clicking 8-bit. You can see this is now changed to 16-bit. That just means that we can work in the full range of color within this footage, and we're going to get better results when we come to things like color grading and matching colors and things. Okay, so moving on, back to this rigging. The first thing we're going to need to do is create a matte painting to get rid of this rigging. So let's do that by duplicating our footage, Control or Command D, double clicking into that footage, coming up to the top here and selecting our clone stamp tool. Now Photoshop users will probably recognize this tool, and it does work in exactly the same way as you would expect it to in Photoshop. So hold down Alt on your keyboard. We're going to select this target area here, and then I'm going to move over to find a similar area in the floor. You can see how we've selected the point of this intersection here. I'm going to find a similar area here and begin to paint from there. And we're just going to very carefully paint out as much as we need to. I think that's going to do the job. So let's just come back to our composition. We can check, yes, we have got rid of everything. So back in here, the problem you're going to notice is at the moment we are taking from here and replacing here, which is fine when that area is clear, but as soon as some of our other actors come into that area, we can see that they're being cloned into this space. That's not what we want. There's an easy fix for this. We can come back to the start of the timeline, right click on your footage, go to time and select freeze frame. That will now freeze this for the entire shot. Perfect. Okay, so if we go out of here, back to our main composition, we can see our rig is gone, but we've now lost all of our actors rushing in, and we just have this one frozen shot. So the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to mask out anyone who crosses over the top of our painted out matte. Now there's a few ways you can do this. You could just start drawing masks around a new version on top so that we can replace our actor on top of our patched footage, but we're going to end up with lots and lots of 4K layers if we do that. We may start to get a bit sluggish while we're working, so instead I think a better option is going to be to make a new solid by right clicking in the timeline and selecting solid. We can make it comp size, we can choose a bright color to make it stand out, and we're going to call this one rig matte. Okay, we can hide the layer, turn our patched layer back on. In fact, let's label these. This one is rig removed. This one is just footage. And by the way, to rename things, I'm just hitting enter or return on the keyboard. That allows me to type. Let's also start to be a bit more organized up here. So let's make a new folder called footage. And we can put our footage in there. We'll make a new folder called comps. And then we can put all our compositions within that. And this is our main comp, our render comp. And we'll also make sure that stays at the top when we look at them by name. Okay, right. Next job. I am going to turn off my rig remove layer for the minute. No, I'm not. Okay, so I'm going to select our rig remove layer. I'm going to select my elliptical mask from up here, and I'm going to draw a mask around our footage, and you'll notice something weird is going on. Okay, now this is just an issue to do with the time remapping, so let's undo that. What we're going to need to do is pre-compose this layer so the time remapping happens in a different composition. You can do that by coming up here to layer, pre-compose, or by selecting the layer and hitting Command or Control Shift C. Let's keep this called rig removed. We're going to make sure we move all the attributes into the new composition. There we go. And now when we draw our mask, here we go. Everything's working normally. We can see we can use our mask to cover up our rig. I'm going to make this as small as possible so we have less work to do replacing our actors. And I'm also going to hit F on the keyboard, and I'm going to feather this mask about 20 in this case. This could vary depending on your footage, but for us 20 seems to be working quite well. Okay, 40. Okay, good. Right, let's start painting our actor back in. So I'm going to turn off this layer for now. Going to come to a point where our actor actually does cover up most of this rig. So I think we're going to be able to get away with just doing a mask on the first section of the footage, and then this second part we can probably leave. It does show up slightly here, but our attention's going to be on this part. I don't think it's really going to notice. So let's go to around here where it's completely covered up, and let's shrink our mask layer down to there. Come up and grab your pen tool. If you don't see it, it's here next to the mask tools. Find the pen tool, and we're going to start drawing masks. Let's zoom in on our footage to about 200%. Hold down the space bar to help you move around. And I'm going to start by selecting around. I'm going to start by making sure we have our rig mat selected. And I'm going to draw roughly around the actor's head and hair. Okay, it doesn't need to be perfect. Just get it as close as you can. Well, another thing that might be helpful, I often work at half or sometimes third resolution so that things can run a bit more smoothly. But when we're drawing masks, we want to be quite accurate sometimes, so full resolution can be helpful. Okay, let's zoom back out. And we're now going to animate this mask to follow along with her head. So come back to our selection tool and hit M on the keyboard to bring up our mask path. If we click the stopwatch, you'll see we can make a keyframe here for our position of our mask path. Then drag back in time till the head is almost off the screen and move our mask. Go back another frame and move the mask off camera completely. There we go. Right, so now you can see if we scrub through time, our mask follows along with our head. Sort of. Next job to do is to go ahead and tweak this mask. So I like to use the halfway method. I make 2 keyframes at the beginning and the end of my motion, and now I work in halves. So I come to the first half here, double click my mask to select it all, move it into position roughly. We can zoom back in again. That's going to make things a little bit easier. And again, at the moment, we're just trying to get things roughly matching. Nothing perfect. Just following along with our head. Okay, come to the middle here. Same again. Match up with our head. And the middle here. Again. Match it up. And to the middle. Okay, we're looking pretty good. Right, let's go in now and tweak some of these. So we were pretty good here. Just want to move some of these points to make sure we're getting all of the hair. Obviously, the longer you spend doing this, the better it's going to look in the long run. It can be quite a time-consuming process, but stick with it. It's worth it in the end. You can click in the middle and drag 2 points at once, can be helpful, or you can drag boxes and move multiple points. The middle of this one, make some more adjustments. Okay, I think we're looking pretty good now. Right, let's see if this is working. Let's go and change our track mat. So click on toggle switches if you don't see the track maps. Let's just close all this down so we can see what's going on. Right, on our rig removed layer, we need to go and change our track map from none to alpha inverted. Our solid layer, which has been masked and tracked in to our footage. We have our footage below, our rig remove layer, set to alpha inverted. This means that it is being cut out everywhere that red mask travels over it. So we'll be able to see through underneath to our actor. As you can see, her arm is still being covered, but her head now appears over the top. So as I'm sure you can tell, the next job is going to be to go through and do the rest of her body. We've got her arms, the body, legs, and I think that's probably it. We've got a foot here, which doesn't quite get covered. We might get away with that one, but we definitely need to do this arm and this part of the body. So I'm going to go ahead and do that quickly, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so finished masking out, and as you can see now, we've got a completely removed rig, which is lovely. I'm going to go ahead and pause this playback, scrub through to the end, and we'll see we have a slight problem now that when we finish, our mask ends and this pops back on. Now, I'm going to fix this by dragging the end of our removed rig in and hit T on the keyboard to bring up its opacity. Set a keyframe, drag that back a couple of frames and set its opacity to 0. So now it should just slowly fade off over those last couple of frames, so we won't notice it disappearing. Okay, let's just extend the timeline a little bit. See how we're looking. Okay, great. Like I said, we can see it pop in for a split second here, but I think by this point we're already focused in the middle here and we're not going to see it so much. Let's just have a quick look at our before and after. So we can turn this layer off. Before. And after. Much better. Okay, so the boring stuff out of the way, let's get on to what we're really here to look at. We're going to add in some blood splatter spraying out as they're coming in and tearing into pieces. Okay, first of all, let's jump over to Google and have a look for some images. I just did a quick search, spray splatter, made sure my image was set to large. Make sure you put your tools open, set to large, and that's everything that came up. These look pretty good to me. So navigate to the website, found a couple of textures. I went for, I think, this one and this one. And so you can go ahead and download those. These ones come nicely with a pre-cut out background, transparent background, but I will show you how to take a black and white image and use that as well. Okay, so back into After Effects, let's double click in our project window, highlight our splatter images and open. Now let's start by dragging one of our splatters over. See, they're nice and big. I'm gonna hit S on my keyboard and scale this down. Let's go to the beginning. Okay, I'm going to have this one coming out of his head, like so. And let's bring in our splatter number 2. Again, hit S, scale it down. 40. Here, come up here and grab my rotation tool. take the splatter around, back to our move tool, this one in here. Let's just scrub through the timeline a little bit, see how these are going to work along with our other actors coming in. Okay, that's pretty good. This one can come down a little bit. This one can come out a bit. Yeah, looking nice. Okay, so like I said, I've got transparent backgrounds here, but you may have a black and white image, so let's just quickly go and show you what you would do in that instance. I'm going to start by pre-composing my layer. Command or Control Shift C. Let's rename this Splatter 2. And if we go in, we can make a new solid, make that solid white, and place it underneath. Now when you see we go back to our render comp, we have our splatter on a white background. Now all you need to do is come over to your effects and presets, and you're going to type in extract. By the way, if you don't see this effects and presets window here, you can come up to window and select effects and presets. Okay, under keying, we're going to take the extract and place it onto our splatter layer, and then we're going to play with the white point until all of this white disappears. So drag this back, you'll see straight away it disappears, but we get some of this fringing around the edges. So we're just going to keep dragging it back until that fringing is gone. And I find for this something like 8 works well. Okay, let's have a look before, after. Perfect. So next step, we need to change the color of our splatter. To do that, select one of your splatter images, go over to your effects and presets and type in fill. We're going to take the generate fill effect and put that on our splatter. You can see straight away, perfect, right? Yeah? No. Okay, let's change the color. Let's go for more of a deep, dark, arterial red. Something like that. Okay, so we've got our splatter looking nice and red. The next thing to do is add an effect called CC Glass. Can double click and add that to your layer. Okay. If we twirl down the surface, first thing we need to do is change this lightness to alpha. So rather than using the light values in the layer, we're going to use the alpha, which is the edges of the layer. You can see this is giving us a pretty interesting look. It looks kind of bubbly and liquidy, but it's a bit intense for what we want. So let's go in and adjust some of these settings slightly here. So first of all, I'm going to change my height to 10. I'm going to twirl down the light, and I'm going to change the light height to 70. I'm going to change the direction to 90. And then I'm going to twirl down the shading, and I'm going to change the first 3 values, ambient, diffuse, and specular, all to 40. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. Next thing I'm going to do is copy all of this, Command or Control C, select my second splatter layer, and hit Command or Control V. Great. Now I've got some gory looking blood splatter. Next thing, take both of these layers. I'm going to pre-compose them into layer, pre-compose, call this splatter, and move all the attributes. We can then set this layer to overlay. Overlay is going to make them look slightly darker, and also kind of let some of the texture from underneath blend through a little bit. So it's going to kind of help it blend into the scene. Okay. Another thing that we need to do to help these blend into the scene is to add a blur to them. At the moment they're a bit sharp. We can see, although this footage is 4K, it's really nice and crisp, these are just far too sharp for the footage that we shot. So on our layer, let's go and find the effect Gaussian blur, drag that across, and I'm going to set my Gaussian blur to something like 7, I think should work for this. Next we're going to animate this splatter so that it comes out rather than just being on screen from the start. So I think a good point for these to appear is going to be around, once everyone gets involved, maybe around here. The second one maybe a second later. Okay, so let's go for here. Right, double click into the splatter. We are going to take our first splatter image and we're going to start animating it with some masks. So for the moment, let's turn the effects off so that we can render a little bit quicker, and turn this down to half. Okay, so we want these splats to animate onto screen. Let's do that by drawing a simple mask to begin with. I think I'm going to want to draw my mask on my layer to come from here. This would be number 1. Okay, let's go and change M, and we're going to change our mask to none for the moment so we can see what's going on. We're going to need another mask to reveal this stuff. Set that one to none. And finally we'll need a mask to reveal this stuff here. Okay. Again, none. Right. Hit M on your keyboard and make a keyframe for each of your masks. Move that keyframe along a couple of frames, and then we're going to shrink down the masks. Okay, let's go and set these masks back to add and have a little look. Not bad. Okay, and then if we select our masks again, hit MM, see we've got something down here called mask expansion. We're going to set a keyframe for that. Come along a couple of keyframes after, and I'm just going to expand the masks so that we get the rest of the splatter that was cut off. Again, let's play this back, have a look. Not bad. Nice. We can also go back into our render comp and see how that's looking. Bring this back down to half. And that's looking pretty good. We can go to just before the animation, drag this in to our render, so that won't appear until we're ready for it. And then we just need to go and do the same thing for the second splatter, which we want a few frames after. Okay, we are looking pretty good here. Now, obviously, I'm sure you've noticed, the next thing we've got to do, we've got to mask out all of the areas that we want to be obscured by our actors. Now again, this is exactly the same process as we used on the rig removal, so I'm not going to bore you to death by watching me do that. I'm going to chug through, speed it up, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back. That masking took me about half an hour or so not too bad really. Let's have a quick look at what we've got. Great, so we can see we've got some nice blood splatters that are being masked off around our actors, and it's looking really good. Right, the next job I think is to add some colour correction and make these images pop a little bit more. I'm going to do that first by selecting a new adjustment layer, and let's just rename that to CC for colour correction. In our effects window we're going to right click, come down to colour correction, and the first thing we're going to select is the levels adjustment. We can see here we've got our graph for the colour and luminance information within our image, and at the moment we have all this dead space either side. So to fix this I'm going to drag in my whites and drag in my blacks to just about where the graph begins, and now we've got a much brighter, punchier looking image. Next, right click again, I'm going to come down to colour correction. This time I'm going to add an effect called curves. Now the curves allows you to do things like add contrast and to brighten layers and to darken layers. If you create one of these points and you want to get rid of it, you can just click and drag away to the side. Now it also gives you the option to go to the individual colour channels. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go to the red channel, and I'm going to add a small amount of contrast into the reds. I'm going to add a small amount of contrast into the greens. Just play around with this until you find something you like. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to go to my blues, select a point in the middle, and then just bring the shadows down a bit. Okay, so we'll be introducing some blue into our shadows. Okay, there's the before, the after. And that looks pretty good. Okay, finally, let's add hue and saturation. And I'm just going to boost the saturation up by maybe 10. Nice. Next, I feel the edges of this shot are a little bit bright, so we're going to darken those down by adding a vignette. This is my process for a vignette. I like to add a solid, make sure that solid is black. Let's rename this layer vignette. Then if you come up to your mask tool up here, next to your pen tool, you'll see if you click and hold you've got options for all different shapes. We're going to select the ellipse tool and then just double click to make an elliptical mask in the middle of your layer. Now we can see this is doing the opposite to what we want, so we've got an option we can either invert or change this add to subtract. Then if we hit F on the keyboard to bring up the mask's feather properties, I'm going to feather this out maybe 300 pixels. That looks good. And then all we have left to do is change the layer's blending mode to soft light. Nice. Now, if this effect is a little bit overpowering, we can always hit T on the keyboard to bring up our opacity and set that down to something like 70. Okay. Now the final thing that we're going to add to this shot to really help blend in our blood splatter to the original footage is we're going to add a layer of noise and grain over the top of everything. Now originally, when this footage was shot, the video footage had some grain within it. If we zoom in really close, we can probably see some of that grain. Definitely see it here in the jumper, and really on this magenta jumper over here. All this noise. Now, as these are just still images that we've added of blood splatter, they have no noise generated on them. And on a big screen, that can really stand out. So to help blend these in, we're going to go and create another adjustment layer. Let's call this one grain. I'm going to come over to my effects and presets and type in grain and select this effect called add grain. Now to begin with, you'll see it just brings up this preview box. That's because this is quite a render intensive effect and can be very slow, but we want final output. Change that to final output and you should see the box will disappear, and now we have grain over the entire image. I'm just going to go and pick one of these presets. One of my favorites is Kodak Vision 200T. Let's go ahead and select that. And there we have our finished shot. So all we have left to do now is to preview this. I'm going to go and select my main composition window. Press the tilde key on the keyboard, which on a Mac is the curly key next to the Z key. That will take us to full screen. And let's watch this back. Alright, this looks great. I hope you've enjoyed following along with this compositing workshop, and you can take these ideas and put them into your own work. Okay, so that's all for now, and I'll catch you on the next one.